Greetings. First and foremost, I would like to say thank you to everyone that commented on the last video. The thoughtful comments, the ones I agreed with and the ones I disagreed with. I appreciate you taking the time and commenting on the video. Second, this will be the last video that I make about the generations. It was not my intention to start an argument or have the negativity that was displayed in the comments. I intended it to be lighter than that. It got a little heavy. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest. I don't change anything on the original video. I stand by what I said. But this will be the last video on that topic. I don't care to have a channel that is argumentative in that nature. So there you have it. I'm here for fun and to share information, share stories, whatnot, and that's fine. I'm not interested in monetization, so I don't care about participation for the sake of participation, for the sake of the algorithm, that sort of thing. Any contact is good contact. I don't care about that. This is going to be a positive channel. I intend to keep it that way. I can't meaningfully respond to every comment. I tried to comment to a few on the first video, and with everybody's experience being unique and everybody's position being unique, it's hard to respond with any specificity to people because I don't know what your situation is compared to my situation. I don't know what your experience is compared to mine. I don't know your background, any of that. There are just too many variables to respond to any meaningful response. I can comment on some generalizations that were made, some accusations and whatnot, and I will try and do that. There were a couple of comments about the boomer generation being the largest voting bloc in history and just in numbers. And I'm a little bit confused by that, I guess, because the implication seems to be that boomers all vote for the same thing. They don't. I can tell you they don't. We differ on opinions just like every other generation, like every other group. You know, the voting thing confused me a little bit. I would tend to think that would be more a government Republican Democrat issue rather than a generational issue. As far as government is concerned, that's been screwed up for a long time. You know, the two-party system has been a problem long before boomers. I don't know what can be done about that. You know, if you have a solution, go for it, by all means. Like I said, the government and politicians have sucked forever, in my lifetime anyway. I don't know what to say about that. If they will continue to suck as long as everyone allows them to do what they do. I don't know how boomers are responsible for that. But if you think they are, then I guess you think they are. Okay, take two on this issue. I got a little upset a second ago doing this section. It was suggested in a couple of comments on the last video that the boomer generation was handed an idyllic existence. Like as if the boomers were given Eden and turned it into Dante's Inferno for a number of reasons. I don't know where that comes from, that we were handed all the opportunities and all the, you know, one commenter described it as a Norman Rockwell existence. I don't know where that idea comes from. I'm just going to list a few of the things that from my memory of that time. We had the assassination of John F. Kennedy when I was in junior high. During my time in high school and after graduation, we had the military draft was still in place and the Vietnam War going on. So the fear was being drafted and sent to Vietnam. We had the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers. We had the Civil Rights Movement, which was not a particularly Norman Rockwell time. We had Charles Manson and his nonsense. And I'm just going to read these off here. I was born and raised in Detroit. I'm not going to read them all. I was born and raised in Detroit, so my experiences are from that perspective. I was born and raised in the city. You know, people from the country or rural or different cities will have different experiences. But we had the riots in Detroit. There were riots in California as well, and the East Coast had riots. We had economy crashes. We had the housing bubble that burst. That was a little bit later on. That was actually more Gen X, I think, than the Boomer generation. But those two generations seem to get mixed together quite a bit. That was another complaint in the comments from the Gen Xers. They were being called Boomers and didn't like that apparently. Who could blame them? So anyway, the point is, you know, it wasn't Eden that we inherited. It's not Eden that the next generations inherited. The Xers and the Millennials and the Yers and Zoomers and all the rest of it. There was a fair amount of talk about the lack of opportunities now for the younger generations, and I don't know exactly how to address that because the lifestyles now are so different than they were from 50 years ago. Expenses are different, economy is different, lifestyle is different, opportunities are different. There's still opportunities out there. You just haven't found them yet. If you're looking for opportunities, you have to look for them. You know, there's nothing new about that. You know, everybody has to look for the opportunities and be prepared for the opportunities when they arise. You know, some of the comments were, you know, my parents had this and my parents had that. Well, your parents worked for the things that they had. You know, they weren't handed anything. They worked for what they have. I worked for everything I have. My parents didn't give me anything. They gave me their love and their assistance when they could, but I wasn't handed anything. I can't speak to anybody else's experience, but from my experience, I don't recall being handed anything. I made my own way. As far as jobs go, the job market is so different now. I don't know how to respond to that. There are jobs out there. You know, it wasn't that long ago stores were closing because they couldn't find people to work. I think the idea of entry level has been lost. Everybody wants to start at the top, or not necessarily the top, but start at a higher place than they're qualified for or experienced for. It's always been explained to me, or the way I understand it, is a ladder. You know, you start on the bottom rung and work your way up, which is the way it's always been. Even with the college degree, it seems like the expectation now is because I went to college and because I have this degree, I'm qualified to start at the top. Well, that's not the way the world looks at it. You know, you're not being paid for your degree. You're being paid for the value you bring to the marketplace. You may have more value with a college degree than somebody that does not have a college degree. But if you're competing with other people with college degrees, your experience, your attitude, and all these other things are the determining factors, not the degree. And again, I'm speaking from my own experience, just from what I see around me. I didn't go to college. I don't have a college degree. I'm a high school graduate. You know, I never had a professional, what anybody would call a professional job. I made my way with the opportunities that presented themselves to me, or the opportunities that I found. Another thing I can't really speak to is crushing debt that was mentioned a couple of times. My mantra has always been to succeed and to, well, I don't know how to explain it. Not even to succeed, but to have a comfortable life. Is that a reasonable way to put it? You decide. Is to avoid debt. Don't buy what you don't have the money to pay for. I mean, obviously some things are going to have to be financed. Not too many people can buy a house or property for cash. A lot of people can't buy a vehicle for cash. So there are some things that you're going to have to get a loan for. But as far as credit cards go, it's a bad deal. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about that. I don't know, for somebody that's in heavy debt, I don't know how they got there or why they got there. So it's hard for me to speak to that. But my singular advice to anybody coming up now is stay away from debt. Live within your means. If it means not going to Starbucks, don't go to Starbucks. If it means having a $200 phone instead of a $1,200 phone, have a $200 phone. Yeah, it's going to be inconvenient for a little while. It might not be exactly what you want, but you won't have debt. And when you find your opportunity and get to that place, then you can have all your benefits. Nobody starts with everything. I shouldn't say that. Some people do start with everything. Most people don't start with everything. Most people work for what they have. Another pretty common theme in the comments on the last video was that boomers lived and voted and whatnot in their own self-interest. Yep, true, we did. In voting for our own self-interest, we were also taking care of our families. So it was in our families' self-interest, our family's interest, ourselves and our families. Same thing you're doing. Same thing you will do when you find your opportunity. You will vote for things in your own self-interest. Who votes against their own self-interest? I'm not going to apologize for voting things that benefited me and my family. Am I going to vote for something that doesn't benefit my family, myself and my family? Of course not. My parents acted in their own self-interest, did things to benefit themselves. In return, it benefited the family, my brother and I. I voted in my self-interest, benefited myself and my family. My son votes in his self-interest, benefits him and his family. His kids will vote in their self-interest, will benefit them and their family. That's how it works. I don't know what anybody expected other than that. There were also several comments about not being able to afford a house. I don't know anybody of any generation that doesn't think the housing market now is insane. It affects everyone. It's crazy. There was a housing bubble a few years ago, 10, 15 years ago. There was a housing bubble and it burst. And the people that had bought a $300,000 house were left with a $200,000 house with $300,000 house payments. So they were paying on a debt that was more than their house was worth. It recovered. It's, to my knowledge, it has always recovered. Is this a bubble we're in now? I don't know. There was another comment on the last video. A fellow mentioned that his parents' house was bought for $30,000 and now it's worth $600,000. I'd like to see that house. I'd like to know the details on that house that went from $30,000 to $600,000. That's not typical. There were a fair number of comments, or several comments anyway, about the economy, the current economy, and I agree with you. It's terrible. It affects everyone. My grocery bill did not go down. My grocery bill went up right along with everyone else's. So I don't know what to say about that either. Did my generation make mistakes? Absolutely. No question. Just like every other generation before and every generation after. We have our share of mistakes. I think one of our biggest mistakes was not preparing our kids properly. And I think we share this one a little bit with probably the Gen Xers. In an effort to make our children feel special and loved, we failed to teach them that though we think they're special, the world doesn't give a shit. Everybody is special to the world, or nobody is special to the world, however you want to frame it. Kids now are raised feeling special by their parents. When they go out in the world, they're expecting to be treated the same way their parents treated them. The world doesn't care. The world cares about itself. And we failed to pass that along. Our bad. But the thing is, every generation has to figure things out for themselves. You know, our parents' generation figured things out after World War II, after Korean War. Boomers figured things out for themselves through Vietnam and civil rights and the rest of it. Xers actually seem to be doing pretty well. The ones that I have knowledge of, the Xers seem to be doing really well. The rest, are going to just have to figure it out for themselves. Figuring it out it's up to you. You can't blame it on somebody else. You have to figure it out for yourself. That's what it boils down to. And that's the same as it's always been, and the same that it always will be. Times change, things change, and the generations change. That's just life. I don't know what to tell you about that. What I can tell you is, if you throw up your hands and say there's no opportunity, I can't do it, blah, 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 and quit, that's on you. Don't try and put the blame on a previous generation, whether it's the boomers or the Xers or the millennials or whatever. If you throw up your hands and quit, that's on you. I would tell you, never give up. If something doesn't work, try something else. If you don't have an opportunity here, look over there. And I know the comments that I'm going to get on this video already. You know what it's going to be? Okay, boomer. So people ask to have knowledge passed down to them, but when it's offered, it's disregarded. So, we're doing our best. One of the things that seemed to be missing from the comments in the last video was any sort of gratitude. And I'm not talking about gratitude toward the boomer generation or any other generation in particular. I'm talking about gratitude in general. You know, gratitude for what your parents did for you. You know, there was some talk about what they didn't do or what they should have done. I didn't detect a lot of gratitude for the things that you do have. Attitude is probably the biggest factor in success in my personal experience. And measure success however you want to. You know, if it's a dollar figure, that's fine. If that's how you want to measure it. Success, you can measure success and happiness, contentment, however you want to. It doesn't matter. But your attitude about how you look at life, how you look at responsibility, how you look at all the different things that make up life. Attitude is absolutely, in my opinion, the biggest factor. If you have a negative attitude, you could be doomed from the start. Okay, it's boomer talk. I don't care. Call it whatever you want. I'm talking about my own personal experience. That's all I can address is my own personal experience. I don't know what your situation is. I don't know what anybody's other situation is or experience. I can only talk from my own experience. And like I said, you know, for anybody that's maybe anybody that's not a boomer, if anybody came back for version 2 here, anybody that's not a boomer is probably going to be looking at this video and rolling their eyes and shaking their head and, you know, accusing me of boomer talk and being out of touch and all that. I get it. That's fine. You know, that's, get from it what you can. If there's nothing to get, sorry. You know, what else can I say? One of the comments on the last video criticized me for suggesting tolerance, mutual tolerance. Okay, you know, then don't be tolerant if that's your stick, you know, that's fine. Another one, actually my personal favorite comment on the last video was, it was, I want to get it right because it was so funny. The guy said I was the antithesis of cool, that I should get a haircut, change my shirt, and quit trying to be cool. That was the comment. It was my favorite comment, and I actually replied to it, and I went back to screenshot it just so I could have it for posterity, and the comment was down. Now, I don't know how YouTube comments work, whether they take them down or whether people can take down their own comments or what. I don't know how that works. And in fact, there were I made replies to some of the comments on the last video that were deleted or they didn't show up. So I don't know how that happened. But anyway, that was my favorite comment. I'm trying too hard to be cool and I should cut my hair and change my shirt. Oh, God. So like I said earlier, this is going to be likely to be the last video on the generations and the differences and the conflicts and whatnot. That's not why I started this channel, and that's not the direction I'm going to take it. So we'll be going back to my personal experiences, my personal feelings about things, and if anybody that wants to comment is more than happy to comment. If they're nasty, if they're snarky, I'm going to delete them. So you can leave them if you want, but if you can have a different opinion, that's fine. But if you're going to be nasty or snarky or something, I don't want that on my channel. So like I said, since I can't speak to anyone else's experience or situation, I'm going to go back to just talking about my own experiences and whatnot and how I feel about things. And please comment if you like, and we'll go from there. Peace, joy, and rock and roll, baby.